Main problem that men have is they think that women mean what women say. If you give women more money, they don't want men as much. Relationships are transactive, and if that doesn't happen, we don't have a relationship. Everyone, whether they're single or married, within 5 years, their strongest intrasexual competition will be in AI.
A while back, we watched Dr. Anna take shots at Dr. Orion's content for chasing the algorithm.
So Dr. Taraban calls his psychology psych hacks, which sounds great in theory, but the issue is that he hasn't truly provided any psych hacks or any evidence-based psychoeducation on his channel in about 3 years. But more and more Manosphere sounding titles started to get peppered in there, until eventually pretty much all of his content started to sound very woman negative. The red pilled content got about 50 times more engagement than his regular content.
Woman negative videos, 50 times the engagement of his regular psychology work. And her conclusion was basically he sold out. Maybe, but that's not the interesting question. The interesting question is the one she skipped. Why does it work? Why does a psychologist saying these specific things get 50 times the views? We're going to answer that question today because Dr. Orion just did a 2-hour podcast that is frankly a masterclass in why this content lands the way it does. Let's get into it. Ain't that a man?
One of your former clients told you, and this is funny, that when his wife filed for divorce, she said she could get everything she needed from a man via TaskRabbit and Tinder. And you said she kind of has a point. Women don't necessarily need men anymore or as much as they did before.
They don't need a man. They definitely need men. They need men around because men still predominantly build and maintain civilization. Like with it, where women aren't fighting for gender parity at hydroelectric dams and coal mines. They need men. Men provide the convenience of the lifestyle that they enjoy in which they think they don't need a man, but that's provided to them by men, not women.
Yes.
What's your belief on toxic masculinity?
I think the only real toxic masculinity is the absence of masculinity. When you talk about, when a lot of commentators, and most of them are women, talk about toxic masculinity, they talk about stoicism, they talk about emotional suppression, they talk about kind of a machismo that won't allow men to feel, or at least to express that emotion. And what they seem to prefer is a man who's softer, who's kinder, who's gentler, who's more in touch with his emotions. And whether they're aware of it or not, they're describing traditional femininity. They're basically saying that the best part of masculinity are the parts that they recognize as feminine. I think that the only real toxic masculinity is the absence of masculinity. And we see that very clearly in the statistics around, let's say, the outcomes associated with being raised by single mothers. When there is no strong male role model present in children's lives, the outcomes are much poorer. They're much more likely to not graduate high school or college, or to have mental illness, or to fall into crime. So I do think that masculinity is something that kind of grounds and provides and is firm and strong. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do think that in general, there is a trend, especially in modern therapeutic culture, to mystify female preferences for relationships as the healthy or right way to have relationships. And I don't think that that's true.
There it is. He just named it. Gynocentrism, the modern default of treating female preferences as the healthy, correct way to run a relationship. No questions asked. The men who've been divorce raped in family court and lost their kids resonate with that immediately. The men who watch their own parents divorce resonate with it. The men who spent years watching mainstream media hand every relationship problem back to the man's side of the ledger resonate with it.
What's your belief on toxic masculinity.
And the fact that the host of this podcast asks him the question, "What do you think about toxic masculinity?" indicates that this is a thing in current society.
Let's talk about the term toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
If you're watching us on YouTube, you'll notice that we have more men than usual in our audience. That's because we invited them here, because we're talking about the alarming statistics that show that many men, especially young men, are not okay.
So with men and masculinity constantly being bombarded as toxic to the point that even Oprah Winfrey has to acknowledge it, there is clearly a need for this content. Dr. Orion has a PhD, a clinical practice, and the kind of delivery that makes a room listen instead of laugh. That's not nothing. Presentation is a skill. So what do you think happens when something most men have already been thinking and living gets confirmed by a credible source?
Reason we're at historic lows for romantic relationships.
There's a lot of reasons for that.
What's actually happening? What are the reasons for that?
I think the main reasons are economic. They're like macroeconomic. There was this really fascinating study that just came out of Denmark. Did you read this one? It came out a couple weeks ago. And it's such a great study methodologically because they took publicly available data on the entire population of Denmark, like every single person for 14 years. It's one of the most robust samples you could possibly consider. And what these researchers discovered is that for just a 5% permanent salary increase, men were more likely to have children and women were significantly less likely to have children. If you give women more money, they don't want men as much. Now you might think, well, why would that be the case? Don't they need love and companionship, et cetera, As you know from my book, one of my arguments is that relationships are transactive. And we enter into a transaction when we exchange unequal goods of comparable value. And if that doesn't happen, we don't have a relationship. It's a non-starter. And in the sexual marketplace, in the game of mating and dating, those unequal goods tend to be men's resources and women's sexual opportunity. Women tend to get involved with men who can significantly improve their lives. On some level, that's entirely rational. So when women's lives get better, they have a smaller subset of men that they will consider as dating and mating partners. And we see this happening. We see all of the sexual opportunity being increasingly concentrated in the top 10, 15% of men as women define that. It's not the men who are thumping their chest and saying, well, I'm a 1% guy and I'm a high value guy. It's the women who are deciding that. The cat decides what milk is good, right?
Dr. Orion just confirmed what you've been hearing in this space for decades. Briffault's Law, hypergamy, and the legendary Esther Villar, who wrote The Manipulated Man 55 years ago and said flatly, women are in business. Listen.
Once the contract is signed, his employers can relax. Their leverage over him continues to increase. A woman behaves in much the same way with a man. She gives her man just enough rope to ensure his preferring life by her side to breaking his contract with her. A woman may, in fact, be compared to a firm in a number of ways. After all, a firm is only an impersonal system aimed at achieving a maximum profit.
This is pure gold. Content creators aren't reinventing the wheel. What they're doing is taking age-old information and presenting it in a way that resonates with the current audience. Esther Villar, a woman publishing the brutal truth about women, was groundbreaking. That was her unique selling point, and the book became a bestseller because there was demand for it. A PhD providing red pill vitamins and using credible sources to justify the arguments gives him an edge. This is why the Manosphere can't be dismissed anymore. For decades, this was just anecdotal, just bitter men, just correlation dressed up as truth. Now, there is a growing stack of real data lining up with what guys have been saying since the AOL Instant Messenger era. Except now it's coming from PhDs as content creators too. You can still disagree with his conclusions. You cannot wave the data away.
And they only will entertain the possibility of a relationship generally when it will significantly improve their lives. I looked up the statistic just a little bit ago. The vast majority of female medical doctors in this country, we could say that is one of the highest earning, highest status professions, marry male medical doctors who make more than them. However, the majority of male medical doctors do not marry other female medical doctors. Does that make sense? Like the average annual salary of a female medical doctor's husband is $97,000 a year. The average annual salary of a male medical doctor's wife is $23,000 a year. No woman, especially after she works 15 years, makes a lot of money, earns the highest possible degree that our society awards, says, finally, I can take care of a man. You give a man just a little bit more money and he'll start thinking about, wow, finally, now I can afford to have a family. But if you give women more money, they don't think that. They think, great, I can take care of myself.
Was there anything misogynistic he just said, or did he just point out the truth? This is Red Pill, gentlemen.
Let's talk about female disrespect in the boss test. You have a test for whether a woman's behavior toward a man is disrespectful, right? Which is, would you say this to your boss if you wanted to keep your job?
And that's the test that I have suggested to women, because I think that oftentimes women don't even know when they're being disrespectful to men. And I've made some episodes on here, some examples that often fly under the radar that men perceive as disrespectful, that women maybe don't. And so that's the test to women. Would you say the same thing in the same way to your boss if you wanted to keep a job? And the pushback I generally receive from that is, Orion, he's not my boss. And you can even see in that response that she doesn't even think of him as a peer. Like it's dripping with contempt and condescension, which is precisely where I'm coming from. It's this attitude that even if the man is not higher than her in that relationship structurally, this is how men perceive respect. And why wouldn't you want to purge the disrespect from your tone or from your language in order to have more satisfying, harmonious relationships? It has nothing to do with who's actually higher than whom. It has to do with the fact that tones and word choices are very that's really where attitude gets conveyed. And when a woman speaks to a man that she's in a relationship that way, what she's basically communicating is, I don't have any fear. For better or for worse, fear is the basis of respect. It always has been and it always will be. I have no fear because I don't think that you're going to retaliate at all. And I don't feel like you're going to get fed up and leave. And I could probably do better.
This is why some people describe black women as the canary in the coal mine. Black women have dramatically outpaced black men educationally for years, while simultaneously experiencing some of the lowest marriage rates in America. Education changes priorities. It changes expectations. And eventually, it changes relationships. It's a pattern that's impossible to ignore. That's why men click on videos like this. Almost every man watching has lived some version of this exact scenario, where a woman treats her boss with more patience, respect, and restraint than the man she's supposedly building a life with. That's the entire Manosphere playbook in one clip. He's not teaching men something they didn't already experience. He's giving language to something they already felt but couldn't explain. Fear is the basis of respect. Isn't powerful because it's new. It's powerful because it puts a name to a frustration millions of men already recognize.
But bad boys are perennially attractive to women, first and foremost because they're exciting. Danger is stimulating. It makes you feel alive. The closer you are to death, on some level, the more you do feel alive, right? And any seduction strategy that works on women always works to the extent that it succeeds in stimulating their emotions. There's more than one way to do it, but you have to stimulate a woman's emotions in order to get her to be interested and invested in a sexual relationship with you, okay? And danger does that like directly, right? So first and foremost, it's emotionally stimulating. Secondly, they're safe for women. And this is something that is often counterintuitive to a lot of guys, because a lot of guys will see the biker with the face scars and the criminal record as like, you probably really shouldn't be spending, I mean, that guy seems a little risky, you know what I'm saying? But here's the thing, how do I put this? Women are more concerned about their physical safety than men are for a number of reasons. One of them is that they're just physically smaller and weaker than men are. And so if push comes to shove, they could potentially find themselves in a sticky situation, as it were. And that's just the average man. The average man is more powerful than the average woman, right? But men also have this sort of hierarchy. They're not going to mess with the guy who is really strong physically and potentially a little unhinged and already has a demonstrated track record of, let's say, putting his money where his mouth is when it comes to standing up for his reputation or protecting his name or his posse or his woman, etc. So if a woman can succeed in securing that man's affections and no other man is going to mess with that guy, then she actually doesn't have to worry about all other men. Like, if she can sidle up to the most dangerous biker at the bar, then she only needs to worry about that one guy, because no other guy is going to start something with that biker. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, if she's with a different guy, she might have to still worry about him because the average man is more powerful than the average woman. But what if the biker starts something with this average dude? Well, is this guy going to be able to protect her? So even though most men will look at that guy and think, wow, he seems, I wouldn't trust that person, there is kind of an instinct here that makes those men feel safe to many women.
The classic bad boy, good guy dynamic. Every new crop of guys eventually ask this question or wants it confirmed, because at first glance, it doesn't add up. You hear women complain about men constantly. Men are trash. Where are the good ones? And then you watch with your own eyes the exact type of guy they say they don't want get chosen over and over again. The foolishness. Your eyes aren't lying to you. And here's the thing, in that same Oprah episode, Scott Galloway's advice to men is keep approaching, keep getting rejected. Eventually, it'll work out. That's not advice. That's a participation trophy dressed up as a strategy. It tells a man to absorb more rejection without ever asking why the rejection is happening in the first place. Dr. Orion is telling you why. Galloway is telling you to just take it on the chin and approach again. One of these men is diagnosing the disease. The other is handing out aspirin and calling it a cure. Oprah was doing damage control. The damage was already done the moment men started noticing the gap between what women say and what women choose. Men don't want a pep talk. They want the truth.
Was confidence your secret? Because you said as a broke theater actor in New York, you got laid more than a successful doctor.
I'm doing pretty well for myself these days, but yeah, I was broke as a joke, man, and I was living in public housing in Brooklyn. It was month to month. There were women who wouldn't tell their friends that they were coming home with me, you know? And back then, I really wanted to have a wife and to have a girlfriend. People generally want what they don't or can't have at any given time, right? My secret was I was pretty psychotically confident. Like, I was very sure of myself, and God knows where that came from. But the third thing, is that I was also a contextual alpha. A contextual alpha means that you are on top of a status hierarchy. And as an actor, that's what was going on. So I was often the leading man in these shows. Now, sometimes there was 10 people in the audience, but I was the lead actor for those 10 people. You know what I'm saying? You could be the lead guitarist for 2 guys at the local bar on a Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? So if you're on stage and everyone's looking at you and focusing on you and clapping for you, et cetera, like there's something of something gets transferred onto you. It's almost like a totem. It's almost like it's like magic, right? That really does help. So
Here's the one we actually want you to remember. Contextual alpha, being the biggest fish in whatever pond you're standing in, is not a new concept. It has a name, and it's older than Dr. Orion's practice. Social proof, coined by Robert Cialdini back in 1984, and pre-selection, a concept the pickup community was already running with in the early 90s, years before it got systematized in the mystery method and popularized by Neil Strauss's The Game in 2005. Dr. Orion didn't just figure out what men wanted to hear. He figured out that they wanted to hear it from him. And that's the whole thesis of this video in one clip. He didn't invent the wheel. He gave the wheel a diploma. And that's great for this space. So that's the answer to the question Dr. Anna never asked. Why does it work? Because none of it is actually new. The toxic masculinity line is closer to the term's own 1980s origin than the people using it as an insult today. The economics were being written about by Esther Villar over 50 years ago. The boss test is describing a pattern that's been visible and documented for decades. The bad boy dynamic is older than psychology itself, and contextual alpha already had a name before Dr. Orion had a license to practice. What Dr. Orion actually did was take things men have been saying to each other forever, at the bar, on the porch, wherever men talk, and for the last 30 plus years, online too, in forums, and now in group chats, and hand it all back with a PhD attached. That's not nothing, that's presentation. And presentation is a skill. It's why a room listens instead of laughs. And here's the part Dr. Anna and plenty of others conveniently skip. Nobody blinks when a psychologist builds a career specializing in eating disorders, or grief, or workplace burnout. That's called having a niche. Dr. Orion's niche happens to be dating and relationships from a male perspective. That's not a scandal. That's a specialty. Any psychologist, man or woman, is allowed to choose what they focus on. You don't get to defend that principle only when it's convenient for your side. Stay locked in. Listen to all, follow none.
Manosphere, we working. Protect yourself at all times. This video has officially been highlighted.